On today's podcast, we have the one and only Ariel Hyatt. Ariel is an artist advocate. She's also an author and head of cyber PR. We had a great opportunity to discuss a lot of very interesting things about artists, about motivation, about understanding your whole sense of purpose and being an artist, about whether, being an artist is actually a way of life or not a way of life. She had a lot of very interesting things to say regarding artists in terms of their career and building that career, and what kind of commitment it takes from not only you, but from your family, and the questions you need to be asking yourself before pursuing this as a career. You don't want to miss it. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we're with leading artist advocate, author, and head of cyber PR, Ariel Hyatt, who we had an opportunity to discuss a wide range of subjects, ranging from questions artists need to be asking themselves before embarking on a career in music, to how artists successfully build relationships with an audience today, and the concept of artists as entrepreneurs, as well as much more. You don't want to miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Insiders. Are you looking to take your music career to the next level? Then you need to know about the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source serving the music business community for over 28 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Monthly, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in print, PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit them now at musicregistry.com and receive a 10% discount by using coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured interview is with artist advocate Ariel Hyatt. Ariel is somebody who's been in the music business from time when the industry was very different and operates today in an entirely new and innovative way. And you're going to want to hear a lot of what she has to say. Very insightful things about the artists, about your motivations, about your intentions, and about a concept which is something that Eric and I truly believe in, which is the artist as entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's something that I think is absolutely crucial, and we get into that conversation with her.
Yeah, and I thought a couple of the points that I thought were real poignant in this interview were the commitment to the artist career. Like, what is your commitment level? And we've talked about this over and over again on this show about how committed you are and what are you prepared to do in order to succeed in your career, whatever that definition of success is. One of the other things that I love that she talked about was also the changing relationship between the artist and manager, that artist-manager relationship, and also identifying the audience and their tribe.
Absolutely, and that's a very unique and special kind of concept. Seth Godin talks about the tribes. Seth Godin is one of the leading marketing experts, so you're really in for a special treat with this one.
So, Insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured interview with Ariel Hyatt.
Hey, Ariel, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine.
You've been in PR for a long time, and the kind of PR that you do now at your company, you're sort of, I would say, like an artist advocate. And how did you become an artist advocate? How did you move from PR into the specific field that you do now?
It comes from a really honest place. My dad is an artist, and so I think it's in me to advocate because I watched him. He was a filmmaker. So growing up, I watched him suffer with the advent when film started going to video. It was very much like when MP3 started coming out, and I saw a similar pattern of really recognizing that artists need advocates because it's really hard to, as we all know, navigate this confusing world that's been changing for the 25 years since I've been in it, but obviously so much more rapidly now. So that's the short version. But I think also when you run a service-based company, you're acutely aware that, what you do is for hire. So if you want to work with a publicist or a marketing agency, or now we're much more artist development, we work for a fee. We don't work for a percentage like a manager or, that type of booking agent. And a lot of artists out there cannot afford fees. And so I think a lot of my advocacy came from just understanding that my phone rings a lot and there's a lot of people on the other end that are confused and they can't afford to hire people to unconfuse them. So that's where my writing and blogging and books come in.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. This is Ariel, and thank you, because as an independent artist myself, we need many more of you out there. So it's great that you're doing what you're doing. Can you give us a brief overview of Cyber PR as a company and its personnel and any other ancillary operations it may have?
Absolutely. So Cyber PR in its current iteration is much less a PR firm than it's ever been, although we do from time to time take on some PR projects. But really, where I know the many, many years of experience and relationships that I have are handy for artists is in artist development. So when I used to work at a record label back in the early 90s, when we would sign an artist, we were very much an artist development label. We were an independent record label that was very interested in the long-term well-being of an artist's career. And so I learned from a very early age, my first job really in the business, that artists need development. They don't just show up the first day all ready to go. And this is something that becomes painfully obvious when you look at trends now in the industry. You see record deals being doled out to artists that have platforms already built and brands that are already doing something and millions of followers that are already engaged. And so many artists need to understand what that part of the journey is. How do you get not a million fans? I mean, how do you even get 10 fans? A lot of artists don't even understand that. So that is where we focus. We focus on connecting with and getting fans into your stratosphere so that you are powerful and you can do whatever you want once you are in control of and have a loyal fan base.
It's interesting hearing you say that, because one of the things that I have heard from so many people in the industry who are on the front lines of signing talent is precisely what you said. You're getting these artists today who have a platform, who are signed, but that's it. They have never performed. They have no idea on what is required of them. They just know that they wrote a song that's now taking off and the record company is signing them. And as you know, the artist development process, the process of actually making somebody, appealing beyond just their song, is a huge and daunting challenge, even for major labels who have staff and are undertaking this. But even they are starting to do this. There was an article in the LA Times about this a couple months ago. I don't know if you saw it, where Atlantic, had this whole training thing for people that they had signed that had never performed, had never made records, had never done the development process, and yet, like you just said, we're also in an era where so much of the expectation on the other side is that an artist and their manager or whoever, or companies like yours, will be developing talent, will be bringing the artist up to a certain level of, awareness. And yet we're sort of seeing both extremes.
Totally.
So let me ask you, as a marketing expert today, what information sources do you rely on the most to help your clients?
Well, thank you for your newsletter, because I do find a lot of amazing articles about the industry and its state. I spend a lot of time, because we do a lot of social media advising and we do a lot of social media posting on behalf of our clients. So I do love Social Media Today is one I love. HubSpot has a lot of how do you do what we call direct to fan. It's called something else in their world. That's a site that I love. John Loomer is a Facebook expert who helps with advanced Facebook techniques. So that's a place I often read his blog. But I'm all over the place. I love to read not only what's trending in the music industry, but also what's trending in marketing. We need to know, what's going on with TikTok and what's happening on Instagram and what are the best practices. So I read a lot of best practices and trend articles, but then there are just so many wonderful bloggers and artist advocates that are there now. And I love particularly artists who are sharing their experiences, whether it's on podcasts or on a blog. Of course, Ari Herstand comes to mind because he's kind of the one leading the charge. But Bree Noble has a fabulous podcast where she interviews lots of musicians about their journeys, and I always learn so much from just hearing from other artists with their trials and tribulations. I also love Ryan Carillia has a great podcast called Break the Business, and he's constantly talking to artists about what's working and what they're finding because marketers are not artists. And I think that's another thing that as an artist, when you do hire a marketing company or a publicist, you always have to keep in mind we are just your bullhorn in a way. But it's you that is creating what is on the other end of it. So it's very interesting for me to always hear about what is working for artists, what are they struggling with. And I think right now we're at a very interesting time in the industry in general where finally we're beginning to be honest about mental health and what's going on with artists as well. So I'm actually lately been reading a lot of mental health articles because it's very important. If your mental health is not okay, clearly you're not going to succeed. If you're trying to get out there, especially when you put yourself out there, if you're vulnerable in any way, it could be a disaster.
No, I totally agree. And also so many artists, too, that are bringing that forth and bringing that particular aspect to the forefront of consciousness among their fans with their own blogs, with their own postings. Billie Eilish comes to mind, several others.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
and definitely coming from that artist perspective, understanding the psychology, because it's a roller coaster ride. So you've got the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. So I definitely can relate to that. Ariel, talk to us about artists as an entrepreneur. Take us through that consciousness, because that's actually something that's near and dear to my heart as an artist, because I've taken it upon myself to run my own business as a band and those kind of things. Take us through that.
I think there's a huge problem with that relationship. And I mean, the first thing I want to say is the whole entrepreneur buzz, the fact that so many millennials are leading the charge and expressing that they are entrepreneurs and want to be entrepreneurs and aspire. We have to remember that not everyone in the world is cut out to be an entrepreneur. That is why people have jobs. That is why there are companies and not everybody is the head of it, right? So it's a very interesting issue because it takes a lot to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be willing to really understand how business works, and you have to understand how finances work, and you have to understand that it's not comfortable if you're going to choose to be your own boss and if you're the sole person in charge of creating all of your income. There's no job, there's no paycheck, there's no W-2, there's no guaranteed money coming in. That's a very, very tenuous position. So I think obviously artists are great at being artists. They're great at songwriting or playing or performing or all of the above. And then you have to add in, well, now you also have to understand business, and it's complicated. It's a long journey. I mean, I can speak for that because I've been an entrepreneur. Cyber PR is 23 years old this year, and I started when I was in my, early 20s. And yes, I had a lot of moxie, and I was very creative. I was never an artist. I'm not a musician, but I had to learn. I had to go to seminars and workshops and learn about balance sheets and QuickBooks and, all of the things that you need to learn about when you're running a business. And that is not easy to do.
Yeah, I think it takes a certain personality. Yeah, for sure.
I think it does too, which is why, usually when there's a band of 4 or 5 people, there's the one person who is the one person that's the business-minded person.
Dominant.
And then,
That's exactly. That's me.
right, and then
I'm the A
right,
type.
right, that's the entrepreneur in the group. And then everybody else is like, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They're drinking beer or
Right.
partying or, just they want to
Exactly.
meet girls or they're so socially inept, but they're so amazing with a guitar. So you're like, okay, that's my guitarist or whatever. I mean, I tease a little bit, but I think that so many artists, they don't they make music because they have to make music. It's a calling. It's not a choice. It's not like, oh, I want to work in this factory. I'm going to go do that. And so this is where it gets really hard and complicated, which is like really having to understand the business. And then let's add on top of that that the business keeps changing. I mean, every week I'm learning something new. Every week when I talk to my colleagues, there's a new trend or a new thing to understand or a new study to read that's, pointing us in a new direction. You definitely cannot learn this stuff once. It's a constant journey. And I think that's the most painful part about being a successful entrepreneur is just like in your music, you have to continuously create and write and perform and make yourself better. You cannot rest on your laurels ever.
It's funny, as I'm listening to you, I'm realizing this is something that I'm always telling artists and my students where I teach, is that I believe to be successful today in the music industry as an artist or as an executive, if somebody just wants to be like what you were saying, I mean, you articulated it exactly right. It has to be a way of life. And especially for the reasons that you articulated, because today it is this isn't the business that you and I started out in, Ariel. It's a business that's radically different. It's a culture that is radically different, an audience, a time and an era that's radically different than it was in 1996. We've moved from a physical medium to a copy model to an access model, and all that entails, and all of the streaming and how we get music into the culture. But I do believe that somewhere between being an entrepreneur and the points that you so astutely brought out with regards to the problems that artists have with that, we also face a thing where you have to really look today to see, is this going to be, like you said, your life? You make music because you have to. And I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that if you're going to be a successful artist today, that it has to become a way of life?
I don't think it has to become a way of life. And this is, after working with so many artists for so many years where, they come to me, they spend a lot of money in some cases, like with whatever it is they're doing, production being just the tip of the iceberg and creating the project and then moving on through to, I want to hire a person to help me with fill in the blank, branding, publicity, marketing, radio, branding, all of the things that you could hire people for. Often you come out on the other side feeling exhausted and frustrated, and it didn't go the way you wanted it to. And Derek Sivers, many, many years ago, wrote a fabulous article about why, what is your why? And if you really just love making music and you love it because of the connection you feel in your band, or because you play once or twice a year at a local venue to your friends and family, and that gives you a really great sense of happiness, why isn't that enough? Why do you have to make a career out of it and become a whole self-employed full-time artist? And I think we should get honest with ourselves, because just because you may want fame and fortune, that's an entirely different conversation of, are you up for doing all the things that are required? And the real question, which is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which as a service-based company, it's the hardest question to always ask artists is, do you have something that is actually viable enough to create that massive fame that you're looking for?
Yeah. Do you have something that is that special and that unique? I think that question today, Ariel, is more relevant in an era where, the worst enemy of great is it was really good, or very good. I think that's the worst enemy, because today nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for anything that isn't just blowing them out of the water or isn't so unique or so compelling. I mean, right to your point, that's really the question. And I think that whole essence has really transformed in today's day and age from perhaps previous eras.
Yeah, totally.
So, Ariel, before we start talking about artists, recording and the marketing of their music, what are the questions do you think that they need to be asking themselves before embarking on life as an artist? You know, is it a hobby or is it my life? Getting back to what we're talking about, making this a life choice.
A lot of this has to do with goals. I see a lot of artists come to me, and their main motivation, sadly, for wanting to do this is they say to me, I just want as many people as possible to hear my music. I just want to be seen by as many people as possible. Well, think about that. Like, Madonna isn't seen by as many people as possible. She's seen by the people that are dedicated and like her and see her, right? So it's like sort of a weird paradigm there. Um, I think you really do have to ask yourself, like, where is that coming from? That desire to be seen or to be famous. Like, is it that you think you're going to make money and money makes you feel happy? Is it that you will feel better if, like, what you have to ask what your why is. And a lot of times, is your why that maybe you've got music with a very deep message that you want to change the world in some way with. I mean, I think that's a much stronger why than I just want to be famous. So I think starting there is key. And then just looking at what really makes you happy. I think a lot of the mental health stuff that we see is when people are not in alignment with what truly makes them happy. And this is where you can get into a lot of trouble. So, for example, if you got real with yourself and figured out that what makes you really happy is producing music in your studio and collaborating on the internet and not really interacting and talking to people and staying home in comfy sweatpants and being a studio rat, if that's what makes you really, really happy, that is not equal to being on an airplane all the time and traveling from place to place to place and getting out in front of people and hauling your gear all over the world and staying in hotels. So you want to ask, like, if I really wanted this and if I could envision myself doing this, is this going to make me is this going to do it? Is this going to make me happy in the long run? And I think if you think those things through, you'll have a much better sense of, where to point your energy and effort.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm listening to you and I'm realizing so much of that comes from, what the intention is, because like what you said, I just want as many people. I mean, well, if you want just as many people to hear your music, I mean, couldn't that be as many people to read your book is it fame you're wanting? Are you wanting attention? The vehicle doesn't matter. I mean,
but I think that's part of the new psychology of what's going on, like the Kardashian mentality. Ever since that,
yes,
it's kind of like that whole thing
famous
has taken
for
off.
Being famous
for being famous.
Yeah.
I think it's true, like what you're saying. What is your why? And is it a valid why for you? I mean, if it's just to get famous, then you got to kind of question that kind of logic and thinking,
Ariel, one of the things I want to move on to something that I've heard you speak extensively on your own podcasts with guests, and that's about the changing nature of the relationship between artists and their audience in terms of what's expected today and how that's successfully built. Can you elaborate on that? Can you speak to that?
I think it's now obvious that this is our new reality, right? I mean, just take the Kardashians. There's nothing that isn't out in the world on those shows. I've never really watched the show because I'm horrified by them in general. But I mean, I understand it. You're in their house and in their room and in their life and in their car, and there's like nothing is sacred. It's like this is now what people. Right, this is the new normal. Is like here it all is, which of course that is not how everybody chooses to do that, but you have to understand that completely being, a lot of artists call me and say, well, I just want to be, an argument I've heard, which makes me laugh all the time is, well, Jimi Hendrix wasn't on social media or Janis Joplin was not on social media. And I'm like, yes, because they died way before social media was a thing. So that's a weird thing to say. And then a lot of artists also say things to me like, well, I want to be mysterious. I don't want to be on social media. And I get why. I mean, not everybody enjoys it. But I think if you pull the curtain, and I know there's been some articles about this, like these artists that are a bit mysterious and they're not on social media, you often find that they have giant vehicles behind them, like multi-million-dollar investments with record labels that figured out like, okay, we can make this mysterious in some ways, but yet this artist is still playing Coachella, or that's not mysterious. That's not hiding in the background. But I do understand that. But so this is what you need to do. You need to understand, where are your fans? How can you feed them? What is it that is interesting for them and for you, so that you can choose the way that makes you comfortable? Because I think we're seeing now with social media burnout and a lot of YouTubers choosing to leave YouTube. That's those articles fascinate me. Like
Yes,
the people,
me too. Yeah.
yeah, the people that, became so famous just finally became so exhausted. And I think we all feel this way about social media. I mean, I know I dread some days, like, oh God, what am I going to post on Instagram? I just don't feel like it right now. And then, when I post, what's really where I think I'm being helpful is when I post articles that I write and they get like no likes. And then I post a picture of my adorable cat, and that's the thing that everybody seems to want. And it's like, okay, well, my cat has nothing to do with my business or my brand or how I make money. And then it can become really overwhelming. And I think we've all experienced this, where it's like, you post about something that is relevant to trying to make you money or directly relational to your career. And people are like, but then you post, yourself in a bikini, if you're lucky enough to have that type of body, or your cat, or some food, or a trip. And those things are the things that people seem to be reacting to. And I think it can become really overwhelming very fast. So back to the original question, which is not an easy one to answer, but you do have to understand where your fans are and how to relate to them. But I think also you are the architect of those decisions in some ways. If fans really like you and you're only writing a newsletter and you're not really doing a ton of social media posting, they will take the time to read the newsletter if they like you. So you can choose your own adventure in many ways. A lot of artists come to me and say, like, well, do I have to be on Twitter? I really don't like it, and I never really understood it, and I'm not funny, or I don't know how to come up with something that's sort of short and pithy, and I don't like the president. I don't like what he's doing on Twitter. There's a million reasons why people don't want to be on Twitter, and you don't have to be if it's not your thing.
Yeah, I think it's important for artists to choose what platforms are best suited for them. You don't have to be on every single one, or every one that hasn't even been invented yet. I mean, it's nice to have a presence there just in case if it does take off. But I think you're right. The artist has to choose kind of where they feel comfortable at and speak to that audience from there. Let me ask you, from a marketing perspective, how did streaming change the game for artists with interactivity and analytics, things of that nature?
I mean, it's so, I don't know if I could even answer that in less than an hour and a half, but I think the first thing, obviously, is it changed the way that they make money, and that you're no longer selling physical products that have a nice profit margin. I mean, I remember the $25 CD on tour at the merch table, the $20 CD. And I mean, I remember how valuable those plastic discs were, and they created entire economies for our artists. And yes, vinyl is having a great resurgence, and there's a whole lot of talk about it, and the numbers are pretty staggering when you look at vinyl. But a lot of my artists, I would say most of the artists that I represent, they're not in the vinyl category. They might be in a couple of years if it keeps increasing. But I think the number one thing, obviously, where streaming has really hurt artists is just that. They are no longer selling something of deep value. And I don't mean value for the fan, because obviously having Spotify is more valuable to a fan because you can take all the music in the world with you on a tiny phone. I mean, it's an unbelievable concept, but it's hurt our artists in such a tremendous way who relied on those physical sales.
Hey, Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured interview. Stay tuned because we've got so much more value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey, Ritch, you're the founder, CEO, legend of Music Business Registry. Tell us what the Music Business Registry is all about.
Well, what it's about, Eric, is it's a company that is designed to provide the most accurate and up-to-date contact information for the music business. So if someone is looking to reach the A&R community, if someone is looking to reach music publishers, if someone needs to reach artist managers, if someone needs to reach music attorneys, if someone's looking to place their music into film and television and needs to reach all the music supervisors, that's the contact information that we provide. We've been doing it for 28 years. We're sort of the industry standard, if you will, for the music business, and have been serving them since 1992. So that's what we do.
Amazing. So if I wanted to find out, let's say, A&R people from Warner Brothers, let's say, I can just go in there and find that in the A&R registry?
Absolutely. You'll find all of the Warner Brothers in there. You'll find the Warner Brothers in LA, Warner Brothers in New York, Warner Brothers in Nashville, Warner Brothers in London, Warner Brothers, probably in Australia as well. So those are the main territories that we cover.
Amazing. And we're offering all of our insiders right now that are listening, if you visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount off your first order. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. Anything else you want to say, Ritch?
Well, when you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com. When you speak about artists, one of the things that I see today, Ariel, more and more, is how an artist, and you must see this too, is that how an artist's personal narrative is so important to establishing, their solid identity. And I'm wondering, can you speak to how an artist can identify and build, their signature story? What are the things that they need to be asking themselves or looking at that are relevant to developing that identity for themselves as an artist?
The first thing to understand is what a signature story is not. And a lot of us who come from the older school of music, where a band bio or an artist bio was about the history. And the reason why that was interesting and important in the 80s and 90s was we did not have the internet. So we did want to know, where were you born? What school did you go to? How did you learn to play the piano? What was your first? Now you can find all of that on a Wikipedia page, or digging around and finding articles about any of your favorite artists, and you can piece together a history very easily if you want to. And so you don't want your signature story to be that. Now, think about how we are digesting brands these days. We are fascinated by what the little moment that moves us is. And even my favorite example is Tide Pods. There's this whole commercial about the baby eating the Tide Pod and how you have to keep the Tide safe from your toddler who's going to ingest it and die. You don't want that to happen. I mean, think about it. When we grew up watching Tide commercials, the message was Tide makes your clothes cleaner than all the other stuff. Now the message is Tide takes care of your baby. Like, it's crazy. This is how the narrative in advertising has changed. I mean, and those ads are quite emotional. You see a cute baby, you don't want the baby to be hurt. It's really amazing how advertising has shifted now. And that's a little signature story right there. If you look at any commercial, it's telling a signature story, and in a way that's emotional. I mean, it's funny because we're talking about products now, but the whole way to get to your signature story is back to what we just talked about, which is, what is your why? And if you can weave that, if you can convincingly put that into a dialogue of, this is why I make this music, this is my calling, this is my reason. Or sometimes there's a story that is so interesting or moving, and it doesn't have to be like an epic story. It doesn't have to be, you lost a loved one and out of your grief came your first album, or you had a divorce, or we definitely see a lot of intense stories, but a little moment, the moment that you decided, I'm going to make a go at this full time, you could probably remember that moment. So it's identifying that can be the basis for a strong signature story. And the signature story doesn't have to be the same story for years and years and years. You can create it and put it out into the world and share it, and then update it next year or the year after. You don't have to. I think a lot of times there's a lot of fear around creating an artist bio because you feel like you're going to be locked into it for life. Spotify lets you change your bio as much as you want on that platform. So does Facebook, so does your website. You could do that whenever. So don't get so attached to like the whole history, but think about telling a little story that's captivating.
Getting back to what we were talking about with artists that, they're expected to like have everything together and, everything all at once ready to go in a nice package. For artists starting out, and this one is so important, I think, how do they identify who their audience is, or as Seth Godin calls them, their tribe is?
This is an interesting quandary because so many artists don't have tribes. They have a lot of other things going on and they've forgotten this part of it in their desperation to be famous or do whatever. They forgot to get an audience that's interested. And that's a huge problem. And again, back to Derek Sivers, like if you're into like just being in your home studio and making beats and, creating music, that's cool. You don't need a tribe. You can totally most people don't play golf to get an audience. They play golf because it's personal. They love being outside. They love the challenge of the game. They're socializing with friends, whatever. It's okay if your music is your golf. Like so many amateur cooks love to cook. Cooking gives them satisfaction. They love to create recipes and feed their family. But not everybody has to start a restaurant, So I think it's important to think about that when you're thinking about what your real reason is. And this is of course not to talk people out, but you do need to have an audience or else you're not an entrepreneur. You're not a viable product unless there are people on the other end that want to receive the product in whatever way that is. If it's streaming, okay, it doesn't make you a lot of money, but you could still find tens of thousands, if not millions of fans in that domain. Or if it's live performance, clearly nobody likes performing to an empty room, but you do need to figure out how are you going to connect to an audience. And, hiring a crappy company that has bots to get you fake followers on Instagram, that's not a real following. How you would gain a real following would be just like you said earlier, is like really connecting with people and being authentic. And whatever the reason is that you're connecting, it has to be legit. It can't just be seemingly done as a ploy to just get more followers, because there's too much of that going on.
Yeah, that's partially what I meant in our previous question about the level of authenticity and the level of personal narrative that comes through with so many of these, artists today, whether it was Cardi B or whether it's Billie Eilish or so many others, where that level of authenticity that you're speaking of is so present in who they are as an artist that it has just so connected. It's like the music is a vehicle for that storyline to reach that audience. Let me ask you, what do you feel are the most important things that an artist should know about their audience in terms of like building value and creating a stronger bond with them? You spoke about, that you need an audience, as to be like a viable product. I mean, it sort of begs that question. What are those elements or the important things? And then the other part to that is, do you feel that artists need to look at themselves as either products or as brands today?
Okay, so part one of that question is, think about it like if you think about hanging out with your friends, like when you go to your friend's birthday party and you're bringing a gift, you put a lot of thought into what you're bringing. You don't just like look around and go, okay, it's a woman who's in her 30s and 9 months pregnant. Let me bring her a football. Right? You would go, okay, bring her a bottle of champagne for when the baby comes, or some baby clothes. I don't know. You think about what you're giving people. You don't give gifts that are just completely random because you found them in your house, right? You give gifts because you like the person and the person likes something and you know what that person likes, and you think about what you're giving them and you give it to them with love and from a place that is generous. That is how you have to think about your fans. So I see so often artists are just doing the thing that they're doing because they want to do the thing that they do, which is cool. But then they don't realize that like the audience maybe isn't as interested in that. And they have to figure out, okay, that's because I'm not in front of the correct audience. I need to find the audience that likes what I'm doing and point what I'm doing at them. And that's where it takes understanding and having marketing savvy. And I think often it does have to start with your friends and your family and the people that support you. This is what I have seen over and over. When you are just starting out, obviously, you've got to ask your friends for your support. And your friends have to, as tribes and Seth Godin says, make yourself remarkable. Meaning, if I hear of something that's fabulous, I want to remark about it to my friend and bring her along. And then that friend should remark about it to another friend and bring him along. And that is how you build a viable audience where you've really got something going on. And I said this on John Ojaka's podcast, and a lot of artists got really, really angry and upset. And I don't mean to say this in a disparaging way, but if you're playing to the same 30 people over and over and over, and there's no remarking and new people coming into the fold, you might want to adjust your strategy a little bit because something is not catching on.
And people got angry with you that you said that? Really? I mean,
Yeah.
what is it that they were fighting? Why were they fighting for that? That's interesting. Okay. That they're fighting for, like, that idea that, well, no, I should keep doing the same thing over and over and over. That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
No, seriously, it is. I mean,
but again, I think this is what I was talking about earlier, especially like when you're in a service-based business, right? It's like there's so much music out there. What's the new statistic? 40,000 pieces of content are going up every single day on Spotify. I mean, that is like mind-numbing. There is like no lack of stuff coming out, right? And it's really, really interesting. And I think painful when you begin to look at, again, back to the question of, am I running a business or am I running a hobby? When you're running a business, the idea is the business should be making you it should be making you, if you look at it from a American economic standpoint, right? The business should be making more money every single year. I guess the second best choice for that, and something I advocate for as an entrepreneur who's been doing this a long, long time, is either that or you're very happy with the amount of money that you make every year and it's the same amount. I think that's okay too. And I think we don't talk about that enough in our society where there's this desire to always have more and be better. And I think it's totally cool if you want to tour the same 10 cities and the same 300 people come out every year and that's how you do it. That's great. I don't think you have to, continuously be obsessed with growing because obviously audiences also ebb and flow. The 25,000 people on my email newsletter list this year are not the same 25,000 that were on my email newsletter list 5 years ago, right? Some people unsubscribe or move out of the business or they're not interested anymore, and then new people sign up, and that's okay too. So I think when you think about your audience, you have to either have them ebbing and flowing and or be building in some way. And that's the conversation that's hard to have with yourself when you're so attached to what you're doing. Sometimes you're not interested in looking at how is this landing with other people, with fans, and that's the hard part of the conversation.
No, I totally hear you. Let me ask you, you've spoken before about this concept, which I thought was very interesting and very relevant and important, especially based on what you were just speaking about. Can you speak to how important it is for an artist or bands to have a plan before they start?
Yeah.
This goes right to the heart of what we're speaking about.
Yeah, I don't know if you need to have it before you start, because I think where you need to start is with your creativity and with making music that you feel really great about in the world. And I've actually seen, and you've seen this too, we've all seen this. It's very weird when you see this, is like the music isn't even made, but people are doing market research to discover like what's really popular. And then they discover like, okay, these 5 things are really, this is how boy bands get made, right? You have labels that were smart enough to figure out like, okay, this formula is going to work. So we're going to orchestrate something. I think that works less and less as we get savvier and savvier as consumers. However, you do need to have a plan. And I can speak really personally to this, as I was a passionate 23-year-old who got fired from a job at a giant promotions company because I didn't want to buy drugs for artists and watch them get ripped off. That was my actual job. And I got fired. And then I was in my house, and I'm like, well, I better start a business because I'm gonna be broke if I don't do that. So I did that, and I did that from a total place of passion. I loved music. I was a giant fan. I did understand how to do publicity, so that was good. I had a skill, and I applied the skill to the passion. But then I woke up 6 years later going, okay, I'm making exactly the same amount of money. I'm not growing. I've seen thousands of fabulous shows, and I clearly know how to do this one thing. What is it that's missing? And how could I make a plan? And when I realized that I needed a plan in my own business, it made it so much easier to see that that's what's missing for artists. And we see that all the time. Artists come to whoever and say, well, I hired a publicist and it didn't go well. And then I'll take one look and go, I can see exactly why it didn't go well, because that publicist didn't tell you that you needed a stronger brand. They didn't tell you that you need to be posting on social media in order for their PR to go well, to help you. They didn't tell you that you needed a stronger photo to go out to the media. They didn't tell you that you weren't going to get covered in national press with only a few hundred followers and only local gigs or not enough of a story. And this is where I get really fired up and heated up about service-based businesses in the music industry where promises are made. Not everybody is going to get on Pitchfork their first few weeks in the business. It's not going to happen. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about, well, if I could just hire a radio promoter, I will get on commercial radio because I have a lot of money to invest in that. Well, of course, that's not true. And that's not how it works. And you can end up on the other side of an experience like that still without a plan. And that's the part that I am trying to remedy. It's the looking at the entire picture and also understanding that, yes, we see it. We just saw it with the new Billy Ray Cyrus track where things seemingly come out of absolutely nowhere, Old Town Road, and blow up. But that's, once every couple of years we see something like that. That's not normally the trajectory of how a career gets developed. And if you, even when you see something that feels like it came out of nowhere and is exploding out of nowhere, Billie Eilish's brother has been making music for years and years and years and years. This didn't just come from nowhere yesterday. He did just start working with his sister more recently, but I have friends that have told me, oh yeah, I met that kid when he was 14. Well, he's 21 now. That's many, many years later. So this is what we don't talk about and focus on so much, is the journey, and that it also takes a long time when you put a plan into place to execute. A plan has different pieces, and each piece is dependent on hitting certain milestones. We could write a 150-page plan that will have everything in it for an artist, and the intention is that plan should take a few years to fully put into place, and you need to adjust, and then the industry changes while you're in the middle of it, so you have to adjust again. And so planning is key, and understanding all of the different parts. Like I mentioned at the top of this, when I started my business, I didn't really understand balance sheets, and I couldn't understand why I was working so hard and not earning a lot of money. And I hired a consultant, and she asked me to write down everything I did and everything my staff did all the time, every minute of every day. And I thought it was the dumbest exercise. And after a few weeks, she analyzed all the data and said, here's why you're not making money. Your team is spending too many hours on each one of these clients, and you're not charging enough money. Therefore, something needs to be adjusted. And then we needed a strategy. It's the same thing with your music business. If you think about, like, okay, I got a juicy gig and it's 2,000 miles away from my house. Well, how much money does it cost to get there in comparison to how much that guarantee is? And that's about planning, and that's about understanding how to make money. And it's not only about how to make money, because I think there is a lot of satisfaction that comes from making the art, playing in front of people, and not always looking at the monetization side of the house. But that's why a plan is so important, because there's a lot of different pieces and moving parts.
What questions or factors should an artist consider when they're building their image?
Wow. Is this true to who I am? I think is the first question to ask, because again, back to the mental health issue and back to just the authenticity. I think everybody loves Billie Eilish, and she is mind blowing because that's her. That's 100% her. There's no stylist there, right? That is like her doing her own thing, and it's resonating incredibly well with people. And so I think when you have something that's that authentic, it's undeniable for people. And so when you are thinking about, I think also you do need to understand we are living in an Instagram world. Maybe a dirty t-shirt and cutoffs is not what your brand is. And I mean, I've had to say to many of our artists that are struggling, I can think of one artist in particular, she's doing really, really well. She tours, she's self-sufficient. She has a great tribe that's growing, and yet her social media was not working. And I kept looking at it and realized she doesn't really have a brand that her audience is understanding. And we had to work with her to adjust it a little bit. And that doesn't mean like that you have to be untrue to yourself, but she was just it wasn't showing up in alignment to what her audience expected. I just read a fabulous article about Iman, David Bowie's wife, and she was talking about her grandchildren and her life with David Bowie. It was a fabulous article, and she talks about how much she loves needlepoint, and it's sort of what she does to relax. And she makes needle points for her grandchildren. And her publicist said to her, "Don't you dare ever in public be doing needlepoint, like waiting at an airport lounge or getting on a plane in public with your needlepoint. That is not what a supermodel does." So if you think about it, like that is not on brand visually. So, you have to think about that when you are thinking about your brand. And I think also thinking about one last note on that is like how much of your personal life do you want to insert into your brand? And that's another personal question.
What are the most important tangible things that artists need to be doing to building their music careers today in your mind?
I would say the answer to that is mostly anything that brings you a real audience. All of those things are tangible, right? Social media, newsletter, live performance, meet and greets, VIP experiences, connecting, crowdfunding. All of those things are audience building things, and all of those things are important.
What books would you recommend artists, should be reading to educate themselves?
Well, there's two books. They're both written by Cal Newport, and he's someone who I really
I love Cal.
yeah, I really do. I think So Good They Can't Ignore You is such an important book when you think about what we've all learned about passion and following our passion. And I think so many of us, including myself, when I got into graduated college with my liberal arts degree and nothing and wanting to be in the music business, I was following my passion. And it did take me years to realize what Cal talks about in that book, that passion isn't exactly what brings you success in the world. And it's just a fascinating book. And there's so many incredible examples of people that went through different journeys where passion is a main theme. So I love that book. And his new book has been really blowing my mind, Digital Minimalism. And, as someone who was an early proponent to social media and was the woman that was screaming at everyone to get on Twitter in 2008, I think that it's really important to understand the effects of social media on our mental health. Again, back to mental health. I love his book. I think it's very important. And I think in it, he mentions that in 20 years, he thinks we're all going to look back at this time just like our parents look back at the time when everybody was smoking cigarettes, like it seemed like that was okay, and that's just what everybody did in the 50s and 60s, right? And now we look back and go, oh my gosh, why did we think that was okay? That was killing us. My true hope is that we look back and we see this addiction to social media in the same way and realize, I mean, I guess there's no amount of tobacco that's healthy, but I think there is a minimal amount of social media that is healthy. And I think we're all in a really bad place right now where it's taking us out of our life experience and our connectivity to other people. And we need to check that. And Cal Newport's digital minimalism really makes a very strong argument for all of that.
Yeah, and I also love his work, his deep workbook. I don't know if you've read that one. That one is just,
yes,
I love it. Yeah, just about concentrating and everything.
Ariel, I want to ask you a personal, professional question because, you know, a lot of people who listen to this podcast are also people who are wanting to pursue careers in the music business. And the question I have for you is, what pieces of advice do you want or do you have for someone who's looking to develop a career like yours in marketing and in artist development?
No one in the world is going to give you your music career. This goes obviously for our musicians and our artists. And I think the reason why I'm relatable to a lot of artists is because I have to do exactly what they have to do. Any of us that are surviving in the music industry today. I meet so many young people. They come to my office for informational meetings. They want to hear about like how do they get a career in music, and they have this weird expectation that like they're just going to get a job and that someone's going to hand them 50, 60, 70, 80, $90,000 a year. That was not the experience of most people that I know that are successful in today's music business. So first of all, especially for you youngins out there, digital natives that are waiting for some record label to give you a job, you need to prove to that record label or that booking agency or that any company that is doing anything that you would like to get hired by that you already have something going on that is interesting and that you've got something that is useful and usable for them. So I went and spoke at a college just 2 weeks ago, and all these young kids gathered around the table. I was doing the mentoring session, and their, graduation is right now. It's summer coming, and 4 or 5 of them were flipping out because, they'd gone on a bunch of interviews. And I said, well, what do you guys really like? What's your passion? And one of them said to me, well, I love playlists. I love making playlists. And I was like, well, you should be making playlists and promoting them. And when you go to any record label and show them that you know how to create a playlist and get thousands of followers on it, that is an asset. That is something that they don't know how to do, probably. You have to bring something to the table that is something that they need, and that is up to you. If you're sitting there struggling and you're dying to work in the music business and you're waiting for someone to hand you some magical fairy godmother job of just going to happen, it's not. Go and start communicating with your friends who are musicians and volunteer to do their social media or their brand or write their signature story or book them some shows. Get your teeth cut. And once you begin to have experience like that and you get good, not to bring Cal back, but so good they can't ignore you, you will have a career in this industry. And you have to do it with intention, and you have to do it so that you're bringing a tribe along with you, because that's what this industry thrives on. So that would be my advice for anyone who's young and trying to get a job. Make your own job until someone gives you the job.
What valuable pieces of advice can you offer artists who are looking to build successful careers for themselves?
Be patient. It doesn't happen overnight. And I know how frustrating it is to put something up on Spotify. I mean, I've got a podcast. I get it. Like, you're just waiting for everyone to come and listen. And, the first week and the second week and the third week, and you're looking at all your numbers and you think, oh God, no one cares. But then you begin to talk to people that say, I just listened to your podcast and it's amazing and it made a difference for me, or whatever. It's the same thing with music. Be patient, have a plan, don't give up. Don't get frustrated. No one out there is going to do for you better than you can do for yourself. That would be my number one nugget.
Ariel, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
Pleasure is all mine. I'm so excited about this new podcast and can't wait to see your other guests.
Absolutely, and we will definitely keep you informed. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Wow. That's,
Talk about a deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what's so interesting is that when we started this conversation with Ariel, you know, I was under the impression, or I was thinking, you know, this is going to be about, you know, a lot of publicity, about PR, about how artists can really, you know, market themselves. But it was so much more than that. It really was. I mean, we really took a deep dive into who artists are
as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, artists as entrepreneurs, which is a concept that is fairly new in the genesis of artistic culture. In the past, artists just had to be artists. They had to be great performers, great musicians, great songwriters.
And they had a whole team that was doing everything else.
And that structure, what you just said,
is gone as we know it.
So much of it is gone now. And more importantly, for our audience, the support system for that no longer exists.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting that she was saying, in terms of the entrepreneur, the artist as an entrepreneur, that it is uncomfortable and it's a complicated, long journey. And I think what a lot of independent musicians fail to realize, and I think you've had this a lot with students that have come across your program and just people that I meet, that they don't realize that this is a business like any other industry in the world. And I think what it is that they've glamorized the music industry in such a way that perception has translated to people like saying, I want that. And when they realize the hard work that goes behind all of that, and they realize, oh, this is like any other job. Well, yeah, that's why they call it the music industry.
Yeah. And you know, I guess I would ask you, you know, when did you, because you're like the living example that I always talk about as someone who on a cellular level got what it takes to have a career. And when did you get that? And because I think that could be really helpful for our audience.
You know, early on, just when I started, I just inherently knew I had a love for the business side too. So I'm a weird one when it comes to that. There was a fascination that I had with the business side on how do records get into the stores? How does that distribution happen? And so I was just really enamored and loved that. And so I just tried to learn everything that I could about that. So, I mean, I already knew that I wanted to be a performer. So that was just, you know, innate that I already had that. But I felt, for whatever reason, I really loved how that worked. How did the charts work? How did every part, how does, touring, every aspect of the industry that we're in. And so I fell in love with, and I just read everything I could about it. And so I felt that helped me along the way with being a well-rounded musician and knowing my business behind that.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were speaking, it reminded me, when I used to teach at UCLA, I had Steve Vai, the great Steve Vai, as a guest of mine.
Incredible businessman, incredible
musician. But he spoke to this, because I asked him the same question, and he spoke to this. He said, I went to Berkeley, I studied, I left school to join Frank Zappa's band.
Right.
But he said, one of the things I learned is that, he said, you're going to encounter people who, either are into studying something formally, and that's their nature, or they're not. And I thought that was a really interesting point, because it goes to the heart of what Ariel was talking about, that you have to have that quality. I think it's an important point, Eric, because I think for our audience today, a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the support systems that existed for artists in the past, that no longer exists for them.
Right.
So, there isn't a manager or a label or an agent or someone who's going to do that for you. That system doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and I think if you're a solo artist, you need to know your business. I mean, that goes without saying. And I think she hit the nail on the head when she said, and it's true, if you're in a band situation, there's always that one person that for some reason or another has that business acumen. And so they take it upon themselves, which is what's happened in the situation that I've been in. And there always seems to be that one person in a band situation that has that kind of innate gift, and they kind of run with that. But as a solo artist, you just need to know all your business, in this day and age.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Another aspect that to me was one of the most interesting, and when we talked earlier about, going on the deep dive, was when she started talking about, how artists really need to get real with themselves on a personal and an emotional level about the why. What is your why? Remember she talked about Derek Sivers years ago wrote, Derek Sivers
What is your why? Yeah.
He was the founder of CD Baby.
Right.
And he wrote that, piece on what is your why. And if you don't have a why that's, rooted in something real, rather than just, I want to be famous or I want, my songs to be heard by a lot of people, you're going to find that this is a very, 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 very difficult path. And the other thing is that on the more practical side, if you recall, she also talked about, do you have something, if this is going to be your path, the music's going to be your path, songs, being an artist, do you have something that is so compelling and viable that will attract people, that people want?
Right.
Yeah. Whether we like it or not, do you have something that people want?
And that's the bottom line, because if you don't have something that people want,
this isn't the career for you.
Exactly.
And it's a very
getting back to the songs. Bottom line, the songs. You ain't got the songs, I don't care what you're doing. Nobody's going to come around for it unless you've got the music to back it up.
And to that point, Eric, there are many, many people who I know over the years who are incredible songwriters, but they weren't great artists.
Right.
And
vice versa.
Yes, and they may have started out thinking that.
But they realized the path.
Yeah, that made me, songwriting was more my thing. I wasn't, Sia is one of the great examples.
Right.
She started out as an artist.
Right.
It was songwriter, right. But as an artist, doing the songs herself, backed away from that for like 10, 12 years, then came back to it and had
massive success.
Massive success. And on an emotional level was very, very conflicted at that station of life,
right,
being with that kind of intense heat focused on her, which is why all the disguises and the hiding behind the...
And I think that's another important fact for our listeners, any of you guys that are listening that are artists, that, you might end up going through the journey and realizing, you know what, I'm not cut out for this and I need to pivot. And maybe it is taking a backseat and being a songwriter, or like what she called the studio rat, like the guy that's just loves being in the studio, doesn't want to be in public. That's fine too. The whole part of this is finding where you fit and going down this journey. But I think getting back to your point about the commitment level is that this is such a long road, and there are so many, the negatives, the no's. I mean, you have got to be it's got to be and that's why there's so many few and far between the people that have survived this, that, have gone through the rejection and everything. So I think it's a really important point that she brought up.
Absolutely. And if you recall on that point, she spoke about, the mental health issues, which she described as, not being in alignment with what makes you happy.
Exactly. What are the goals? Like having the goals, and are they in alignment with that?
Exactly. Yeah. That's a very, very important one. And, those issues are becoming more and more prescient and more apparent. We see it all the time with the extreme amount of drug use, the amount of deaths that we've seen from young artists over the last 5 years is just staggering. Not only the big famous ones, but, other artists too who aren't as famous. It's just, it's historic too. I mean, we've seen that for years, but it just seems to be so prevalent today, and that's a very, very big part of it. The mental health,
which is one of the areas that we want to really focus on with MUBU. So
yes,
we're excited
and we're gonna,
about that,
in future episodes, we're going to be talking with mental health
professionals. Yeah, because I think that's a really important thing to.
And then she talked about also, identifying your audience. And,
the tribe.
Yeah, absolutely, your tribe. And knowing that you have to have an audience. That's a key element. I mean, it's one thing to identify them, but it's also another thing to realize that, and this goes back to your point about, is this really something that you're interested in building? Because if you're not interested in getting out there and doing that work and doing those shows, to a few people as a way of life, maybe this isn't for you.
It's not even that, even communicating with the audience that you're trying to build and start a relationship. That's such a crucial aspect to this. There's so many moving parts to this, but yeah, you have to have that innate connection. And that comes with the music. Obviously, like what, she was saying, it has to move the listener in not only an auditory sense, but in a visceral and an emotional way. And then once you've got them hooked, then you start, building that audience and building that relationship.
Yeah, and that's very true. And the other aspect, as you were speaking, I was realizing there's a difference between what you just articulated and having a great song.
Right.
And there are people, we know plenty of people that we can give examples of in the business where they have great songs. Their songs are hits, they're played, they're streamed, but nobody cares beyond that.
Right.
Nobody cares about the artist. Nobody wants to read interviews. Nobody wants to go to their concerts. Nobody cares beyond the song, which means that you haven't really given the audience something that's compelling beyond maybe even your material. And I'm talking about people who have hit records.
Right.
And then we have people, you can look at somebody like a Frank Ocean or a 1975 is just two that come to the top of my head of people who don't have hit records, who don't have massive streams, but who have phenomenal audiences, phenomenal tribes, who you cannot get tickets to their shows. Completely sold out when they perform live. And those are just two examples. We probably could think of dozens, but that goes to the heart of it too. It's really important to understand not everybody who has hits has an audience. That's all I'm saying. So right to your point that you have to give people a reason beyond in terms of that communication. So it's very important.
Hey Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at mubutv.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show over at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes in our space. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Insider Video Series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Ritch, Esra, and Eric Knight. This show would not be here if it weren't for our amazing team, which are the following: interview editors Sarah Nissenbaum and Alex Taylor, show notes and transcriptions by Jani Chang, Nicole Capodoglo, Lilia Owens, and Sarah Nissenbaum, theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast.